Not really an encounter, per se, more like a malevolent feeling. I was sitting on my bed one night, home alone, while my mother worked the night shift at the corner store. I was scrolling through my phone when I suddenly felt like I was being watched. I tried to ignore it, brushing it off as stress from school, but the feeling got worse the longer I refused to acknowledge it. Eventually, it got to the point that I broke down crying because I was so freaked out, and I fled the apartment. The security guard doing neighborhood patrol at the time saw me and asked me what was wrong. I told him. He actually came into my apartment and basically spoke to the walls, saying that whatever evil was there was not welcome and it needed to leave. I still feel to this day like I owe that man my life. He didn't judge me, call me crazy, or mock me. And after he left, the malevolent energy was gone. It's been 5 years since this happened and the negative energy has yet to return. But whatever it was, did not want me there that night.
I work at a cemetery and had replaced veteran markers with brand new ones at Pioneer Memorial Cemetery in Phoenix. Later on that night, I went home and was sitting with my daughter and heard a loud crash. We both thought it was strange and went to investigate. When we got to the kitchen, we heard another crash and then footsteps. We crouched in the kitchen until it was completely quiet. After we decided it was safe, we sat on my bed and really just reflected on the situation. I said it was so strange, and then we heard the deepest, creepiest voice saying something to us in a low growl. You could actually tell whatever it was directing their communication to us. Then we stared at each other and then heard a big sigh. We bolted and waited in the parking lot at Walmart until my husband got off work. True story. Peoria, AZ.
For 3 years, I lived in a shotgun house built in the late 1800s. It was deep into the woods and surrounded by timber property. It was once a cabin, and you can still see the logs around the doorways. I heard occasional footsteps but told myself that the house was old and just setting. One morning, the footsteps started from the back of the house and ended at the front door. I thought someone broke in. Well, nobody was there. One night, I pulled into the house after a long shift at work. I get home around 2:00 a.m. I turned the car off and sat there for a moment. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone walk up in my front yard. I look over, and a woman in a gray dress is standing there. As soon as I see her, she disappeared. It's the way she disappeared, though. It was like she was on a hoverboard and took off to her right side and disappeared behind something. There was nothing to hide behind in that part of the yard. It happened so fast that I was questioning if I saw what I thought I saw. I really didn't have time to be scared, just slightly startled due to how fast everything happened. I turned the car in immediately, asked myself some questions, and came to the conclusion that I am sane, I'm not tired, my mind isn't playing tricks on me, and my mind isn't going to make up a woman in a gray dress, dark hair, no face, white collar, and disappearing on a hoverboard. I put the car in reverse and drove away to a friend's house. My driveway was almost a mile long. That was the longest unnerving mile I ever driven in my life.
When I was in high school, my family had rented a house from the 80s that had not been updated. I'm talking OG stove and microwave and spooky floor-to-ceiling mirror at the end of a long hallway. I used to hear footsteps in the attic all the time. My brother swore he heard footsteps the first night we moved in. Back then, I would get home from school about 2 hours before anyone else. One day, I sat at the kitchen table to start my homework when I heard the footsteps again. I tried to ignore it, but got this sickening feeling of dread. The tension quickly built, and I felt my hair stand on end in a brief silence before there was a bunch of frantic stomping in circles directly above me. I bolted out the back door and called my dad, sobbing. I sat on the back porch and made him stay on the phone with me for the whole hour he was driving home from work. When he got home, he immediately checked the crawl space in the attic, and we found an old plastic turtle sandbox, but nothing else. I started going to the gym for those 2 hours after that. On the upside, I did get hella fit that year.
This was in 1999. One night I had this tremendous nightmare. I dreamed vividly that I was sleeping peacefully in my own bedroom when the phone rang. Landlines back then. When I answered the phone, the man's voice was one I didn't recognize. He asked for some random person. I said that person doesn't live here. The man hung up. In my dream, I suddenly realized the man was only calling to see if I was home so he could kill my family. Then it was too late. The man was in my house, killing me and my kids. When I first awoke from the dream, I had sleep paralysis, which is terrifying all by itself in case you've never experienced it. You are conscious and awake, but cannot move due to your body still being asleep. So for a few minutes I laid there wanting so badly to go check on my babies. Then I, awake and coming out of the paralysis, heard the phone ring. It was after 2 a.m. I answered the phone, and a man I'd never heard asked for some random name. My blood ran cold in my body and I suddenly froze again with fear. Hadn't I just dreamt this happening? OMG. As soon as I could move again, I threw on clothes, found my keys, and then physically carried my 3 groggy, sleepy babies to the car in what could only be described as some kind of adrenaline-fueled Olympic event I invented. Maybe 3 minutes after that terrifying phone call, I was out the door with my babies in tow to Mom's house, where we spent the next 2 nights. It was real to me. The fear, what the dream meant, the actual phone call that happened, all of it. Just retyping this event has my heart rate soaring. My kids, like I said, give me grief about it to this day, but I like to think I maybe saved us that night.
I lived in a haunted house for 8 years. It was mostly sounds and smells, occasionally something more interesting. We'd hear the sound of dishes breaking in the kitchen, but nothing broken. Once, when we had a house full of visitors, it sounded like the cabinetry in the kitchen broke off the wall and everything was shattered. It was loud, but nothing. People in the room were freaking out. It happened a few times when I was alone there as well. Sometimes it was just the sound of a single glass or plate, except for the first time when my wife scolded the ghost by saying, "You can stay, but you can't break anything." Nothing was ever actually broken. That first time it was a few plates, which she witnessed fly out of a closed cabinet. Smells of cigarette and cigar smoke, perfume, footsteps walking down the hall, doors opening and closing. Sounds of doors opening and closing when nothing actually opened or closed. There were 2 full-body apparitions seen. One was a small boy. The other was a cat. I saw both at the same time. Other people saw one or the other. We frequently felt a cat jump up on the bed in the middle of the night. Now we had 4 cats at the time, but the door was closed and they weren't allowed in. The cats would sometimes react to things they saw, but it was with interest, never with fear. The ghost cat was orange. We didn't have an orange cat. We also think there was a man and a woman. One or both smoked. The pipe and cigar smoke was actually fairly pleasant. Cigarette smoke is always noxious, and the woman was marinating in perfume that we described as old lady perfume. We once caught an EVP that recorded on the tape backwards. It took a year or more of trying to decipher it when I decided to play it backwards. It just said, "What do you want to do?" but all weird and wobbly sounding. Sometimes things, usually important papers, would disappear from my desk. They would reappear hours, days, or sometimes weeks later, always in the same place and in the kitchen on the floor in front of the sink. For a while after my father passed away, we would find peanut shells in the living room on the floor. He liked shelled peanuts. My dad never set foot in that house. In fact, he passed months before I moved in. It was interesting and actually kind of fun. Having guests over, half hoping for a show. Only one time was I ever frightened. I was home alone and the house somehow filled with flies. I killed a bunch, left for evidence later, and then they slowly disappeared as mysteriously as they had arrived. I was home alone that day, but my wife got to see hundreds of dead flies in the sink.